Good morning and welcome everyone to MSF East Africa's headquarters here in Nairobi. A warm welcome as well to those joining us via the live stream. My name is Fatuma Abdullahi, Communications Advisor for MSF. I'll be moderating today's press conference. As the war in Sudan approaches its fourth year, as we all know, we're here to present our report. There's something I want to tell you. Surviving sexual violence in Darfur. This report is based on medical data and testimonies collected by MSF teams between 2024 and 2025 in North and South Darfur. Before we begin, we'll watch a short video testimony from Aisha, a survivor. We're joined today by three panelists who have recently worked in Darfur, providing care, and to survivors, and also bearing witness to their, through their experiences. So over the next 40 minutes, they will share key findings from the report, their personal insights from the field, what they've basically witnessed through their work. This will be followed by a Q&A session open to both those present in the room and those online. The ones online would be invited to submit their questions via the chat. And then, first of all, before we proceed, I'd like to give a very short trigger warning that the video we're about to watch, as well as part of today's discussion, will contain, of course, references to sexual violence and may be distressing. We encourage everybody, both here in the room and those who are online, to take care of themselves and step away if needed, as the subject can be a bit heavy. Let us now begin by watching the video.
يوم النزوع أنا كتولي جانا عمر 12 سنة فيها جنبابي إجانا أنا وأبونا برضو قتلوه. ثلاثة اتجاه الدليل ما دام مشيت الدليل في شهر كده لقيت الناس ده ناسين اتصلوني بعد في شهر زمزم ده أول مرة، ومرة تانية ده دقوني واتصلوني لقوا مرتين. تاني ده أما الله يهداك شديد ده أنا عرفته بعد 3 يوم ده منزل، يعني شكلي قريب شهر كامل ده سجريني، وعمل لي زي ارتهاب كده الدم ده زاد وقبل بدفق ده تماديل ودقوني. إنما المرة الثانية ده كفوف الأدوني ده عمل لي البجويون ده السن ده زاد الضرب وطلعت فيه. والله طبعا لو مشيت ظهر الناس ده بيتونسوا أنا حقي مات، هناي مات، أبونا مات، أخوي مات، أنا نقول برايد الناس كلهم زي ده حياتنا السماء، لكن بعد الأهون قتلوا جناهي ما تدى لا هو الدنيا ده. يا ريت أنا زاد مت أحسن، لكن زول بلا يوم وما قوم. وسواء كان أنا راضي بالناس ده ما يعملوا زي ده عشان نجي لقدام الناس ذات. الله خالق شغل الخاص السنة في فوقنا ده المال جاب عينه ذات الشعب سمع بأذانه.
We will now start our panel discussion with Miriam. Miriam has closely worked or was closely involved in the response in Darfur, particularly working directly with survivors of sexual violence and supporting medical teams on the ground through her work. She has gathered really critical insights into both the scale of the crisis and challenges faced by those seeking care. So she will open our discussion by sharing an overview of the situation and key findings from the report. Please go ahead, Miriam.
Thank you, Fatuma. And thanks to all of you for being here today in present and online. So you saw the testimony. We're talking about 3,396 survivors of sexual violence. In 1 month after the fall of El Fasher, so between December and mid-January, we talk about 732 survivors that reached Tawila. These numbers are so huge that it's really hard to realize what does it mean? What does it mean? Who is behind these numbers? We have here the testimony of Aisha. I would like also to share another testimony, the testimony of Fatima. Fatima is a woman in her 40s, somebody I met when I was in Tawila in the Dabainara camp. She was telling me a bit about her life when she was in El Fasher, the most normal life ever. She was there with her two girls, two teenage girls. When the war started, especially focused on El Fasher, life started to get harder, every day more. How to get food, how to get water, how to have like electricity, how to live. And as the time went by, after more than 500 days of siege, they ended up eating animal foods. They had no more access to water. They were terrorized by the bombing day and night that was ongoing in El Fasher. This was her reality at that time. And then El Fasher has been taken over by RSF. At that time, as a Zagawa woman, she knew that she had to leave. She was far too exposed. And that's what she did. She left. She left El Fasher, she left toward Tawila with her teenage daughters. They were moving at night, thinking that maybe during the night they will be safer, that the RSF soldier will not see them, will not caught them. But as she was telling me, they always catch us. They're always there. They will always find us. And this is what happened. Several men arrive with their moto, surrounded Fatima, surrounding the teenage girls. And there, the girls have been taken. They have been raped repeatedly in front of the mother. The message there was very clear to the mother. If you move, if you speak out, if you try to stop us, you will die, and your daughters will die also. Rape at gunpoint, again and again and again. She couldn't really tell me how long this lasted. If it was minutes, if it was hours. She was totally lost. She totally dissociated from the moment. She wanted to shout, she wanted to run, she wanted to stop them, and she could not just move. At some point it stopped, they left. And the family kept on walking. They've been walking for days to reach Tawila. All along this road, dead bodies everywhere. People who look like them, or the Zagawa, or the Fur, or the Masalit people that has been simply killed, tortured. And this is how they reached Tawila. This is one story. 3,396. That's the number of people that we know have been through that. This is the tip of the iceberg. This report here doesn't show the full reality, the full scale of the sexual violence that women are facing in Sudan. And I'm really talking about Sudan as a whole. Here the data are showing South Darfur, North Darfur. Now we have to understand sexual violence considering whole Sudan. And we don't have this data. When it comes to the eastern part of Sudan, the lack of physical access that we have, the obstruction that we are facing every day to implement our programs, to access to the victims, stops us from being able to show this data, but also to go to be there on the ground and to support the survivors. I would like just to give you the highlights of the report in a couple of words and a couple of numbers. South Sudan is not in the front line. Oh, sorry. I'm coming back from South Sudan. South Darfur is not in the front line. We're really far away from it. And still, all the sexual assault, out of it, we talk about 68% of the sexual assault has been perpetrated by armed men, non-civilians. When we go to North Darfur, far closer to the front line, we're reaching the number of 95% of the rape has been done by men with weapon. At good point. Most of them was gang raped. When it comes to South Darfur, we talk about 60% of gang raped. Then we might have the feeling a bit that this is happening in an acute phase of the crisis, of the conflict, and that it's a bit isolated in time, but it's not the case. When back home, being in South Darfur or in Tawila, that are supposedly safe spaces, they are still facing sexual violence in a repeated way while living their life, following their daily activities, fetching wood, fetching water, going to the market. Then the numbers are appalling. I mean, 22% of them being assaulted while looking for firewood, and 34% while fetching water. And children are in the center of that. South Darfur, 20% of the survivors are under 18. North Darfur, 20% of them. Sexual violence is being used as a tool to terrorize not only the women, but whole communities. This war is being fought on women's body again and again. And this is not stopping. As we talk, this is still happening. And again, the data that we're having do not represent how huge this issue is. At this point today, in all Darfur, there is not one space that is safe for women. And we have to be all clear on that. This has to stop, and this can stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. Indeed, as she just said, sexual violence is not happening only on the front lines, it's happening also in other places, and it must stop. I'd like to, it's a very stark reminder, actually, of the harsh reality of what our teams have seen in Darfur. And I'd also like to give now a chance to Gloria to detail a little bit the situation we encountered in Tawila, particularly in North Darfur, after the fall of El Fasher, and how MSF also provided care to the survivors.
Thank you very much, Fatuma. Thank you very much, my other colleagues and the viewers online and the viewers in the room. Talking about MSF intervention in North Darfur, particularly in Tawila, MSF launched a medical intervention in Tawila after the fall of El Fasher, following the fleeing of people from El Fasher to Tawila, which was the only safest place for them to live. MSF work in Tawila is particularly in Tawila Hospital, providing care, surgical intervention, medical intervention, nutrition program, as well as sexual and reproductive health to women and girls, precisely mother and child, and sexual and gender-based violence. Talking about sexual and gender-based violence, as the data indicated already, the percentage of survivors, according to the data that was presented by my colleague, women and girls contribute to 97% of the survivors, which was 3,396. So 97% of these women and young girls, of which a greater percentage or a greater number is linked to the Rapid Support Forces, which is the RSF. This is not just a word, but these are testimonies given to us in the clinics by the survivors who come to our hospital. Talking about the consultations we had between December 2025 and January 2026, we saw over 732 survivors, which is just a fraction of the representation of women and girls who have survived sexual violence during the time they moved from El Fashir, Zamzam to Tawila. So we cannot say this data is a representation of the whole of North Darfur, because there are still a lot of people out there who are ignorant or who have not taken the bold decision to come up and say, I have been raped or I have been assaulted. It is very clear from the report we gathered from these survivors that this war is targeted against a marginalized group of people, and yet it is tied to moments of displacement and political conflict. But it is clear that these wars are targeted against the Masalites, the Fur, particularly in Tawila, to create awareness about the availability of services in MSF facility or the hospital, to encourage the survivors to come up and speak out on the realities that they have faced as they flee from El Fashir to Tawila. This issue is not just an issue that one can think about. It takes a bold decision for a survivor to come and start talking about being raped. As anybody can imagine how difficult it is for one to say, I have been raped, knowing very well this will be a trigger of your memory, the pain, the brutality that you endured during that moment. The stories we collected cut across all ages and gender. It did not segregate whether these are children or these are men, women, or young boys. It did not segregate. All of them have been victimized or have been traumatized. I have a story to tell. I remember a story of a woman, a mother of 3 children, who reported at the clinic. And according to the story, she told me that as they flee from El Fashir, they entered in an ambush of the Rapid Support Forces, where her husband was brutally beaten, traumatized right in front of her and the children. At the end, he was killed, shot on the head. Then they turned to her and her children. They whipped them thoroughly, and then they gang raped her. 5 men raped her repeatedly, and then later left her to come. She managed to reach Tawila helpless. She didn't have no food to eat. She never had water to drink. She did not have shelter. She slept out with her children for days before she could find where to sleep. And when MSF launched the sensitization in the community, so she heard about it, and she was able to come to the MSF hospital to talk about her stories, to seek for help. This was the story of only one woman I am trying to talk about here. We gave her the support, the necessary support that she needed. There were also stories of men who reported to our hospital. They came not because they had come to report about the case of the assault that was caused onto them, but they came because of the complications that were caused after the assault. Men find it a lot more difficult to talk about sexual assault that was perpetrated towards them during the time they flee to Tawila. So those are the few stories I can share with you, but there is a lot more stories that we have encountered as health practitioners in the hospital. there were a lot of constraints, or there are still a lot of constraints that these survivors endure in their daily life, starting from insecurity. A lot of them feel insecure to travel long distances seeking for healthcare because Tawila Hospital is the only functioning hospital with care for survivors of sexual violence in that region. And yet the camps are far and widely spread apart, that traveling means either you travel for the whole day or you travel for not less than 2 hours by walking or by camel. Those are the only available means of transport they have in that region. There are no cars they can use to travel to the hospital. So this renders many of them to remain home or to remain silent and not report the cases to our facility. That's why I say the data we represent are just a fraction of what actually happens in the communities. There are a lot of people, we believe, who have not accessed healthcare services. There is also lack of services, as I mentioned. Tawila Hospital is the only Tawila is the only place where can be provided care and services. There is stigma within the community. When you talk about being raped, they mark you in a different way and they can tend to isolate you for the things that has happened to you. This causes more psychological trauma to the survivors. So some of them decide to keep quiet and not talk about what has happened to them. There is rejection either by the community or by family members. Some of them reported being rejected by their own family members or by their relatives. Some women also reported being divorced by their husbands because of what has happened to them. These are sad stories and challenges that the survivors are facing in the community of Tawila. Something that remains in me forever, having worked and experienced working in this place in North Darfur, is the cries of the survivors in the consultation room. We see an average of 10 to 15 survivors per day in the clinic. And imagine all of them having sad stories of this nature. Being human, it breaks my heart. Sometimes I am forced to leave the consultation room, walk out, wipe away my tears, get the strength, go back inside and continue with the consultation because I was the only hope for them. My presence, my speech, or my encouragement gives them hope and strength. So if I break down in front of them, it breaks them the more. So I always tried my best to be stronger for the survivors. And that was what I used to do. Remember, these are people who are tired, either tired of life, tired physically, tired emotionally, tired psychologically. They are frustrated, they are stressed, and they are helpless. That's why, as my colleague said, it is our mandate to stand up today, to speak for them, the reality that is on the ground. Something can be done for them to save them or to give them hopes once again. The silence or lack of action in Tawila still leaves me wonder as an individual and ask a question to myself. Why is Tawila different from the rest of the world where there is war and conflict? Thank you.
Indeed. It takes a lot of bold decision and courage to come forward and even seek medical attention, let alone legal processes. So thank you very much for this harrowing account, Gloria. I'd like to now ask Andreza to explain the situation in South Darfur a bit more, where sexual violence has been pervasive despite being far from the front line in the recent times, particularly.
Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Miriam. I have been working with our teams in South Darfur since March 2024. And despite the no acting, actual fighting there in the past 2 years, women and girls are still attacked and sexually assaulted in different locations, still without enough support. I have been talking when I was there with community leaders, male community leaders, female community leaders, women's associations that, despite everything, are still trying to hold together, with young girls, young women, to understand how MSF could support them to access medical care. At that time, we were working mainly in the one hospital, that is the only hospital in the region, and we were seeing survivors, but we were not seeing that many survivors that we are expecting. And talking to the community and understanding that, we will prepare ourselves to launch what is the best service that they can access. I really hope today the world can listen to the voice of women and can act and can do something, because this has been here inside me for a while, and it's not my voice and it's not my experience, it's what they are facing right now there. We all know that sexual violence is a global health issue, and the consequence of sexual violence is not only to the survivor but also to the community. um, Understanding that situation and how difficult it is to women and girls, especially, particularly, to leave their camps to go to a hospital does not fit MSF to be waiting for them in a hospital. We decided then to bring the medical facilities and medical care inside the IDP camps after hearing from them what they are expecting. I also launched the CBC, the community-based care model, that are women selected by the own community that they trust, and we give them the information. But despite all this, we know the lack of information, the lack of access to health facilities, the lack of access to leave their camps, the insecurity, the checkpoints, it's just not safe. They told me, like, it's not safe. We can't go to fetch water. We can't go safely to farm. And I was there during the harvesting time. We can't go to sell our goods in the city, but we need to go. We can't stop going. So they know at the moment they go, they are going to face the sexual violence. It's a very difficult choice, how to survive without water, how to survive without going to the latrine in the evening. There is no choice. You need to go, and they are going to experience the sexual violence. And as Miriam was saying, in South Darfur, what we saw, or what we are seeing even now, it's 60% of the survivors who are coming to us were the perpetrators were multiples, was not a single perpetrator, and one perpetrator is already a lot. And having to experience that by different unknown people, the brutality of the violence, it's, I can just not put it in words. um, I remember that after decentralizing this care in the camps, we were training our midwives, and we were preparing ourselves to have 3, maybe 5 survivors in a day. After 1 week, we were seeing 10 survivors every single day. And most of them were coming to us in between 7 to 2 hours, which means we can provide the full medical care that we are able to provide, for example, to prevent HIV infections. It was just a lot, and it was difficult to see how our health providers need to take care as much as they can to 10 survivors in a day. I also remember one survivor. She was 35 years old when I was there. And that day, I was in the clinic, I was inside the room with the midwife, and that story was a 35 years old woman that came to us 2 weeks before. She got it the full medical care because she was raped. And she was there again because she was raped for the second time in between 2 weeks. And coincidentally, the perpetrators again were multiples. So the heaviness of the experience that these women and girls they need to face cannot just stay, cannot just continue happen until now. There is another one that when we were doing the focus group discussions with women that I can remember now, um, they were talking to us and saying like, we have witnessed girls that were raped in front of their mothers. We have, I know my neighbor that was raped in front of the grandchildren. These are what women in South Darfur are experiencing, but this is what we know from where we have access. Not all of them are coming to our clinics because MSF is not everywhere. We can't be everywhere. And in these focus group discussions, women will ask us, can MSF help us? Can we have prevention of the sexual violence? Can we have shelter because we don't feel safe here? Do we have a safe space in the community? Can we have something that we had before, but there are no other actors? When we have complicated case that we might need individual psychosocial support, there are no actors. So it's very difficult to work in a context when we have the survivors requesting for a multi-sector response, and the multi-sector response is not there. And what I think it's, despite all this violence, despite all the challenge to seek for the bare minimum of water and food, it's also the resilience of the South Darfur women that are able to go in their community every day to talk about sexual violence, to talk about the medical consequence, to tell them that MSF is providing free health service and they can go and they can seek for care. But still, we cannot stop the violence. So my question is always, what the world we will do? Are we continue just let women's and girls' bodies be used as a weapon of war? Thank you.
Thank you, Andreza. Indeed, MSF is not omnipresent. Thanks a lot, Andreza. And I'd invite Miriam again to speak and close the intervention, this part of the press conference by putting on the table what are the main MSF asks around sexual violence.
Thank you, Fatuma. Before getting there, I would like just to put a bit in perspective the situation in Sudan. We're talking now about sexual violence, but we have also to make sure that it's understood the level of violence all through Sudan, generally. We're talking about a conflict that will soon be 3 years now. A conflict where most of the health structure has been destroyed. Most of the critical infrastructure have been destroyed. Access to water does not really exist anymore. Electricity, access to food, all that do not exist now in Darfur, in most places. In Darfur, but sorry, in Sudan I meant. We're talking about drone attacks. This is close to a daily occurrence right now. And drone attacks, not only on military target, we're talking about school, we're talking about health structure, we're talking about markets. Civilians are being killed every day by drone attacks. We're talking about a massive displacement, where 14 million people have been displaced by this war. 14 million Sudanese. 9 million inside of the country, 4.5 outside of it. So this situation of sexual violence is happening in this ground. Access to health, extremely limited. As my colleague was saying, as MSF, we are fighting to get really closer to the one in need, but the need is so huge that we know we will never get there. This is impossible at this point. We're seeing outbreak that should be prevented. Measles. Every year we are facing again cholera. How many people died from that when this could be prevented? This is the ground where sexual violence now is happening. It adds up to the suffering of each and every woman living right now in Sudan. I know it's a bit overwhelming, and it's overwhelming for all of us in here and for you also. Now, this being said, we do believe that this could stop. There are ways for that. And we also count on all of you to pass our message, which is not only MSF's message. This is the message of all these women we've been talking through who have been through that. The one who could not talk, but we could see in their eyes the full experience of that level of violence that can be sexual violence in Sudan right now. We're now calling all the warring party to just stop using women's body to fight this war, to hold the fighters accountable every time there is SGBV cases. This is possible. This is a matter of will. We call for a full access within the territory in Darfur. As we're saying, this report shows very high number already, but this is the tip of the iceberg. We're just scratching the surface, and as long as we don't get a full access with no restriction, no bureaucratic impediments, not anything, then only we will be able to really know more about what's really happening and be able to have access to this woman. We believe that donors should step up. We believe that the international community must step up already. What we're facing right now is a full failure from the international community to protect the civilian population inside of Sudan, and particularly in Darfur when it comes to sexual violence. No clear reports about that, no clear number about that, no system in place to protect this woman, while actually we knew that this would happen. This had happened already in the past. When MSF team was in Tawila, the first thing we were thinking to implement in the community was sexual violence component, because it was written. And what was written also is that nobody would do anything to protect this woman before it happened, but also after it happened. There is no protection services right now in Darfur to support this woman after those acts of violence. This can change. Protection has been embedded, has been supported by the donors. International community must use the leverage that they do have. They should influence the warring party into respecting international humanitarian law. Now, at this point, the humanitarian space is shrinking every day a little bit more. And we are just like getting used to that situation. This is not okay. This is not normal. And this must change, because the more it goes on, the more this woman will keep on suffering, and we will not hear about that. As MSF, we will keep on coming with numbers that do represent an infinite percentage of the reality. We need space, we need access. When it comes to other organizations, when it comes to United Nations, we need United Nations on the field now. They're facing many difficulties in terms of access, entering Darfur, entering Sudan generally, fair enough. But they are the ones who have a mandate to be there close to the organization, to be there close to the population that is suffering, to speak out, to bring supply, to testify, to be with us there, to bring their technical capability to be with the population. Now, today, they're not there. They're totally absent. And the organization, other organization, MSF, we're the one leading the coordination. We're the one leading the response to a situation that goes beyond beyond everything. We need the victims to be protected. We need stronger mechanisms in place so that this do not happen again. We need this situation to stop already now, and we do believe that it's possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miriam. With those closing words from Miriam, we've concluded the first part of the event. I'll now open the floor to questions from the press who are in the room first. And please don't forget to say your full name and the media organization you're from.
Hi, I'm Eva from German press agency DPA. You have already mentioned it's just the tip of the iceberg, and while helping with the psychological trauma is one thing. Can you tell a bit more about the medical impact? I mean, there must be unwanted pregnancies, there must be STDs, HIV, risk of contraction. So if the women have no access to medical teams, if they come maybe too late for an abortion or other interference or rape kits, what are the health hazards they face? And what can be done, what should be done to extend support for the survivors of such violence?
Gloria?
Yeah, thank you very much for that brilliant question, Eva. Talking about the complications, the medical complications, it ranges from physical, psychological, mentally, and emotional consequences. Talking about unwanted pregnancies, yes, there are cases of unwanted pregnancies which we could not put in our data because that is quite confidential. But the cases are there. There are survivors who reported 3 months later with pregnancies, and they were seeking actually for care for unwanted pregnancies. Meanwhile, there are also cases of survivors who report within 72 hours, and we provide care to them. The care provided by MSF to these survivors ranges from, it's a comprehensive care. We provide STI management for syphilis. Okay, STI in full is sexually transmitted infections for to prevent syphilis, to prevent gonorrhea. We also give post-exposure prophylaxis to prevent HIV. We provide vaccination for hepatitis B and tetanus. We provide emergency contraceptive pills to prevent unwanted pregnancies. We as well do referrals for protection, but just as Mariam mentioned before, that is where our biggest constraint is, because there are no implementing partners who are responsible for protection within Tawila. Thank you.
Any other question from the room?
Hey, my name is Tom Mukwana. I'm a reporter for Africa Uncensored. I have a question, and this is a question that might need us to think farther beyond the conflict after it's done, hopefully. What does this do, the amount of trauma that you've all spoken of, what does this do to a nation and its women long term after the violence is done? Because they're just healing from the other one, and then this one happened.
Andreza?
I would try to not be the one with all the answers in this one because it's a big one. Yet I cannot say from the nation, but maybe as a community. And then there are so many different communities inside the Sudan. Most of the consequence that we are talking from sexual violence, for example, medical consequence, psychological consequence, can be prevented, minimized, or supported if it's timely. when that is not in place, the consequence can be very severe. We are not talking only about infections of a certain given community. We are not only talking about unwanted pregnancy, possible complications during this pregnancy, a maternal mortality, a infant mortality. So the entire community is affected because of that. But then when we go back to what also Gloria was mentioned, the community consequence. So if we are talking about the stigma, the exclusion, not able to integrate because of the sexual violence and be part of the community because of that. So the consequence from a nation, it's devastated. And when there are psychological consequences that are also not treated, then individually, but also from that family and that community can be devastated. I don't want to say that every survivor will have consequence and psychological consequence as depression or suicidal thoughts or suicidal attempts, but the circumstances of a certain given environment with our ongoing war and with all the challenge that we heard about no access to food, no access to work, job, and all that, it's an additional to everything that the survivor have been through.
Okay, we'll move then to online, our online audience, if they have any questions. Okay, so we don't have questions online. I think our speakers were very clear today. So we're deeply grateful, first of all, to the patients that had had to make the bold decision to come to our facilities and also, say something about what they went through and get medical support. They entrusted us with their stories. Their voices are the heart of this report. I've just been flagged that there's one question online. Sorry. This question is from RTL Netherlands. They're asking, is there no presence of UN in Darfur at all? I've heard they're active in Darfur at refugee camps, or is that in Chad? Miriam?
United Nations do have presence in Sudan. Not the way they should be. They should be far stronger there, especially when it comes to Darfur. They're not close enough from the front line, and they're not supporting enough the communities as we talk. That's a reality. Yeah.
Okay. So that's it. If you'd like to follow up on today's discussion, or we have spokespeople available even after this press conference for interviews, please feel free to reach out to our team. You can actually speak directly to Mildred, and she will direct you and get you the spokesperson that you might require. Thank you very much for attending, everybody.